I signed one of my first licensing deals with Room 101. And he said, Matt Booth is sitting in my office signing the deal that's going to change his life right now. And a little dramatic, I understand, but he was right. That deal changed the course of my life and it changed the course of our business completely. And you have to keep your eye on the ball and pay attention at all times because one thing leads to the next, and you're not going to slide into home plate off of one deal or even 1,000 deals, but get it right the first time the best you can.
Welcome to the No One Ever Told Me podcast, where we talk about the things that no one ever tells you that you really need to know to be successful and to thrive in business and in leadership. Today, my guest is Matt Booth. Matt is the president of Room 101 Brands. From custom jewelry made the old-fashioned way, one piece at a time, to my favorite cigars on the planet and a recently launched gin division, Matt takes us on a journey from what he thinks it really takes to make it in business. Now, Matt's story is unbelievable, and I'll give you the dime tour real briefly. Matt's a kid of humble beginnings, splitting time in Southern California and Washington State. By his late teenage years, Matt knew the choices he was making would more than likely lead to a real bad place. But at 18, he decided to viciously rearrange his life to have any hope of a real future. And he enlisted in the Marine Corps Infantry and learned discipline, responsibility, and the subtle art of machine guns. But more than that, he learned what it would take to make it in the real world. Matt and I pick up his story from here. So check this out. Well, I'm going to tell you my Room 101 story, which helps me tell my audience why we're talking today. So I hired a new assistant this summer. And she knew my birthday was coming up, and she found out that I like cigars. So she went to a local cigar shop and was like, hey, I need to buy some cigars for my boss. And the guy's like, well, what is he like? And she's like, I have no clue. He's like, well, take this one, and this one. I'm sure he'll like one of these. And it was kind of standard fare on two of them, some name brands you'd recognize. But then there was this one. It was a Room 101 Farce, Connecticut, red logo on the stick.
No shit. Good on him.
Yes.
What store is that?
I don't know. I'll find out, but it's in Nashville, and I'll send you his name and number for sure to thank him. So,
my man,
when I unwrapped this cigar, even the paper on the cigar with the logo, I'm like, this is next level because that's different paper. Something about the
yeah, man, I pay extra for that.
The
paper.
Design spoke to me. The quality of the paper spoke to me. But here's where it got me. It was hands down of the three, Head and Shoulders. So immediately went out and bought a $5 of that pack. I love those. Immediately went out and bought the 12th anniversary you see behind me here. Got a 20 pack of those. I'm like, you know what? These guys have me. So I started following on social media, and I'm like, you know what? This is more than a company. Like, there's a tribe here. These people that love Matt's brand, love his brand.
They're in.
So how do you create a tribe like that? I mean, because you don't have just people that like your product. You have fans of your product, and that's hard to do.
Well, I think, one of the most critical elements in terms of one of the most valuable components to what we've done, how I've done this, is that everything that I do is rooted in authenticity. It's not some contrived effort, right? And I think that, and these are all signals that are genuinely coming from within me. It's a frequency that I'm transmitting on that, similar to a beacon, some people are more receptive to than others, right? This law of attraction, whatever it may be, their chemistry, whatever their, whatever frequency they're picking up. And I think that if you are not broadcasting an authentic signal or a signal that's rooted in authenticity, whether people can summon the words to describe that or not, I think that that resonates on a deeper level with a lot of people. And I think that it's an ultimate currency, right? So, over the years, I believe that I have at least tried to do my best to earn the respect of my consumers and potential consumers and continue to be worthy of their investment, right? They spend their money on our products. And they are inspired by the messaging that we're putting out there in our brand philosophy and what they have come to know about me, or many of them I have become friends with over the years. I think that that it's important that they know with whom they invest, and that they're investing because they believe in what it is that we're doing, And they even, I mean, if you follow us on Instagram, we get the weirdest in the cigar world.
Yeah.
Right? This is like the freak kingdom for me. And I can just be as weird as I want to be, and that's, I think, where I'm able to be the most authentic to myself. And all these cats pick up on that. And so you see people are posting things on, and it's like they're using this very unique vernacular that originally you're looking at the source for that right here. They're
awesome.
And it spreads it's called the spread of brand contagion. I'm infecting them in a way that they appreciate. Absolutely. It's not some sort of insidious exercise here. You see?
Well, if it was marketing only, like, hey, we're just going to attract a group of people that will spend their dollars with us, that would have an insidious nature to it. But on the other side of great branding and great marketing is a great product. Like, you're selling a satisfactory experience that's on par with cigars that are way more expensive. And I feel like I'm on the inside. You know what I'm saying? It's like I've got a secret that no one else has. Now, with my cigar buddies, I tell them all about it. I'm like, you've got to go try some of these.
Thanks,
oh, absolutely. But what I think I love about it is, like, I get to go be like a maven. I get to go tell people about something they haven't heard of yet, because it's not your established, 30, 40, 60 year, household brand in that industry. So you're delivering on a brand promise of, it's not just this tribe with this vernacular that you started. It's also a really great smoke at the end of the day too. You got both.
Well, you got to write checks you're asking cash at the end of the day, right? Like if I just put pretty bans on cigars that were no good, there would be, everybody smoke them one time.
That's right.
The idea is to be able to give people more than what they're paying for. And even though it's an unnecessary, air quotes, luxury, it is an affordable luxury and premium that's purchased at a value for what it is in return.
That's right.
I believe.
Well, and it's so much more than just the product. It's the people you do it with. It's like I rarely smoke a cigar just by myself. Usually it's with buddies on a golf course or playing poker. And so it represents community. It represents sharing stories and spending time with people, it's so much more than just, like you said, a luxury product that I enjoy by myself. It's more than that. I
agree wholeheartedly.
So what's the most expensive cigar that you've smoked?
That's a good question. I've smoked some spendy cigars over the years. If you want to focus on the actual retail cost of a product, I've smoked, some of the Bahique stuff, which I'm partial to. Now, I don't chase after it, but if it falls in my lap, I'll typically splurge. Yeah. Some of the more limited anniversary stuff from Padron, which I make it very rudely clear that I'm a huge fan of and smoke them regularly for my own personal enjoyment. But the thought does come to mind that sometimes price can be assessed differently. Right. Yeah. And I recall an instance where, and the names will be changed to not protect the innocent, but protect your boy from unnecessary and unwanted exposure. I was in a cigar factory and I was smoking a sample blend with a gentleman that I had some business dealings with. And a byproduct of that conversation, there was a little, I guess you could say, treachery afoot in that conversation. Unbeknownst to me, I was much younger in my business and younger in my experience. But I knew when I was done with that cigar that because of the information that was exchanged in that conversation that I had fucked myself. So that was the most expensive cigar I ever smoked because it cost me dearly.
That was not the answer I was expecting, but keep going on.
The Bahique pales in comparison to the cost of that cigar. But, look, like any, I don't want to say like any entrepreneur because I don't want to assign anything to people that I don't know, but like yet again, another chapter in my episodical adventures, I fought through that just like I fight through everything else. So here we are.
That's right. Matt, I'm sure this could be a much longer conversation, but take us to what happened right when you got out of the Marines. What happened next?
I got out. I originally had intended to get out, and I had a Honda Civic at the time. Since then, I have never known such fuel economy, but at the time, I had a Honda Civic, and my intention was to just kind of drive around the country and get into adventures, and figure out where I was going to land, right? And a staff sergeant of mine, Staff Sergeant Darren Bibbs, shout out to my man if you ever happen to listen to this. Another individual that, just like so many others, in a nanosecond or an instant, one conversation, if it adheres, can drastically change the course of your life, man. And right. He was one such figure in my life, because he got out and he went to work for an executive protection firm in Los Angeles called Gavin DeBecker and Associates. At the time, although they had already gained a great deal of traction with that firm, I think the scale and scope of it would pale in comparison to what it is today. I mean, today it's a global organization. It's basically like a private secret service, really, is what it is. I remember the name of the company that he went to work for, and I reached out to them and I applied. And directly upon getting out of the military, I was hired by that company. And although I'm not at liberty to really discuss a lot of what we did while I worked there, I will say that there were a great deal of lessons that I learned while working for that company and being around and protecting some of the most powerful and influential people in Los Angeles and in the entertainment industry specifically, watching their habits, watching how very, very hard they worked, harder than I think anyone would ever imagine. And, and also working for a company like that was, I think, phase two, because the Marines, honestly, if you were paying attention, in an environment like that, there's a lot of politics afoot, and there's a hierarchy that you have to adhere to in some way.
Some rules in the game you got to figure out at some point.
Yeah, man. And so all of this plays into business. If you're paying attention, it's all, there are lessons everywhere, right? And so I was scaling up, unbeknownst to me at the time, and at Gavin DeBecker, I very much honed the beginnings of my email game and communication skill sets. Obviously, I could communicate with folks, but professionally, how to structure communication, how to sculpt and tailor language to accomplish what you need to accomplish or attempt to without exposing yourself unnecessarily. All these things that go into business, right?
Yeah.
And being inspired by the seemingly boundless work ethic displayed by many of the people that I was tasked to work for during that period of time, both in the company as the company was scaling up and we were providing services for.
Sure. So how many years after that security opportunity did the genesis for the Room 101 parent company happen?
Well, I founded Room 101, the brand name, in 2003.
Okay.
Right. I incorporated a couple years after that, but I named the collection Room 101 in 2003.
Okay.
And I did that in the living room of my apartment off Melrose in Genesee. And almost instantaneously, upon EASing from the Marine Corps, I worked at Gavin DeBecker, amongst many other things. I did sound and lighting at the Whiskey, as well as a couple of the other clubs around town, but the Whiskey actually employed me, part-time, and was interned at a couple different record labels, really was interested in pursuing a career as a professional musician, as a performing artist. And, through that exploratory process, I discovered very quickly that if I wasn't going to be writing, playing, performing, I wanted nothing to do with the business at all. And in fact, it was increasingly difficult to, consider pursuing even performance as a way to be my core income generating or earning channel, some things that you love are far best left as that, things that you love.
Those hobbies, man, sometimes those passion points become your source of income. It kind of steals the joy, steals the pureness of those things, I don't think all of us are meant to do those passion things professionally. Some of us are, but not everybody.
Look, man, whoever said, if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life was a fucking asshole.
Preach that.
Asshole.
Yeah.
Anyone that says that, I'm like, come on, man, please. Look, this isn't, we're not in the kindergarten of self-madedom here. This is, I'm a veteran operator at this point, right. And please don't save it. And look, some people, that has to be their truth. Yeah. And I applaud that. I think that is, if you can actually genuinely say that and you're not lying to yourself, good on you.
That's right.
I celebrate that for you. I say, if you do what you love to make a living, you should hope to be able to continue to love what it is that you do.
That is so well said. That, God, that's so well said.
In itself is a blessing. Right. Because the water gets very murky.
Yeah, man.
Right?
Your motives
and you care.
Your motives get messed up in those moments where something that's kind of pure, you're trying to give back to the world, especially when it's an art form like performing or writing songs. You start to go into these moments where I need to write a song or I need to play this concert because I've got to put food on the table. Once those motives kind of get mixed up a little bit, it becomes a little less pure, and then you start to love it a little differently. Now, I know a lot of people that have struggled with that. So take us to the apartment. We start the company, Room 101. We know it's going to be a parent company of multiple brands, but what were you thinking in that moment?
Well, I had been studying jewelry craft, model production, model making, bench jewelry skill sets at the factory that, unbeknownst to me, I would become a partner in later in life. Basically from the first year I was out of the Marines. So I would work all night or all day, and then I would go down to the factory for the rest of that night or day and grind, right, and learn. My vision for Room 101 was inspired by Alfred Dunhill.
Okay.
Not what Alfred Dunhill is today, because I think in many ways it's a shell of its former self as a brand, but the Alfred Dunhill of 1950s time frame, right? The quintessential lifestyle collection of all the finest appointments, right? Anything you could imagine they made, and they made it better than anybody else. And I thought, man, what an inspiring nomenclature for a lifestyle brand. And the idea is that I could have a spine of one category that I was supremely passionate about, which was my jewelry craft, but then add these ancillary extensions that would become, pillars of this brand, right? Of its offerings. And that was, I had no idea how I was going to accomplish that, of course. Had no inroads in any industry that I was even considering operating in. But that was the idea. And I thought, someday if I do this right, maybe someone will want to pay me for this. Someone will want to buy this and take it to a level that I can't independently, And although we've grown leaps and bounds over the years, I've seen, new brands come on the scene and grow in these obscurely, almost an incendiary type fashion, because they're immediately capitalized and infused in a way that I never was, because I was using what I was making at my day job to buy equipment, master and mold designs and things of that nature. So
Room 101 was a side hustle. You use your day job to create opportunity and to create a little bit of revenue and some resource to start it.
Yeah. I used my day job to pay for my life, basic living necessities, and everything else that I made ended up going into either musical instruments or Room 101.
That's amazing. So I want to hit time out for a second, because not a lot of self-destructive 18-year-olds that enter the Marines have got this creative, you said spine earlier, like the center of you is a really creative guy. It's music, it's designing jewelry, it's branding. When did you know you were a creative person? Was that something with you when you were little?
I started playing alto saxophone when I was in elementary school.
Okay.
And it was the one thing that I was really good at.
Right on.
And by the time I was in junior high, I was studying. My teacher at the time played for the local symphony. Okay. And as a junior high student, I was learning her sheet music as my lessons.
So you're not just an ear self-taught musician. You've got a background where you can read music off a page.
I can read and play the saxophone. I can't read and play a guitar.
It's still pretty impressive.
My Jedi, and this is the problem, my Jedi training was never completed. And as I went into destructive mode, I walked away from music. I walked away from my saxophone. And in a similar fashion, I came back, my life reset in the Marine Corps gave me a new chance at life.
Wow.
That reset. And the first thing I did is I moved back to Hollywood and I bought a guitar.
Maybe back up and tell us how you define success for the Room 101 parent company, and then maybe even in particular, since we're talking about cigars, what does success look like for the cigar department? Well,
you mean like in terms of how it's directly related to the business, or like how I personally identify success?
When you think about the future,
milestones in
it
success.
Doesn't have to be a revenue number. It doesn't have to be a sales goal, but it's like, man, when I rest my head at night, I'm satisfied if Room 101 is X. So what's the vision? Yeah.
Well, I mean, speaking of resting my head, I mean, my first milestone on, dare I say, the road to success. I don't want to use that word too loosely here, but on this journey, I mean, the first time that I said, hey, this is a milestone, is when I consistently slept at night, all night. And my next milestone was when I woke up to an alarm because I personally wanted to, not because I had to, go to work for someone else.
Matt, you said something earlier in our conversation about the grass is always greener. So when you're at a job thinking about potentially wanting to start your own company, those are the things that no one tells you, that, hey, you probably won't sleep for the next several years because you're stressed about this company. So will you take us into that part of your journey? Because that's a significant story.
Well, I mean, being born into a family of humble means, there was no inroad in anything that I did via connection, relationship, financing. I was on my own, and still am to this day, right? Except now I can help take care of my family, and have long since been able to do so, which is another, I think, milestone, right? It's not just that you don't sleep. I mean, it's crazy. I remember watching people working so hard to make someone else able to take the lion's share of earnings from their physical effort, right? And they had their own plans, right? And some of them have done very, very well for themselves underneath someone else, In fact, I've had people that have done that tell me that they could never imagine doing all of it themselves. Like, what I have done baffles them. Like, they've done what I've done, but they've carved out their own positions in someone else's company, right? And become partners in the company over the years, et cetera, achieve great success. But it wasn't their own thing. And that's different, So, because you're still doing it, but with a safety net. There's no net. There's no net. There's no net. And when you fall for real. And, being a person that is truly self-made from zero, you can't shoot and miss. So your success is your survival is your success.
That's good.
Right? I don't know if I answered the question. I was just
no, I love it.
Running my mouth. I forget where I start,
That's okay.
But this is a fun exercise. Like, it's inspiring. A lot of these interactions, they force me to remember different things, because you're so focused on what you're doing and where you're going that, all these little adventures, start to come back, so it's fun to have.
There's a reason in a car, the windshield is really big and the rear view is really small. I think we're always supposed to be looking down the road, right? But every once in a while, it's good to look back and remember what got us going that way.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
You probably had to close a lot of gaps, learning gaps, as you became, not just an entrepreneur, but a business owner. And as you add complexity to the business, where did you go for business information? How did you add the right people to your team? Like, where did you learn building an organizational skill set?
I learned some. And I am a horrible manager of people. I want to make that very clear. It's one of my greatest weaknesses. Well, because I work very, very well in the greatest spirit of partnership, both with people internal in our organization and, for example, some of our retail partners, et cetera, the people that are authentically vested in the relationship, partnered, and are also proactive, self-starter, whatever you want to call it. I beat on underperformers.
When you're a self-motivated person,
I'm mean.
It's hard to understand someone who's not as motivated as you are. So I get that.
Well, my wife was telling me last night, she said, no one responds. No one responds to that. But to me, it's like I'm looking at someone, like you also have to remember, I'm in the position I'm in because of who I am. And they're in the position they're in because of who they are.
Yep.
And some people were not meant to do this.
And it's not a judgment. It's just a statement of fact.
100%. But whatever, I beat on underperformers. It's one of my chief weaknesses. It always has been. I'm getting better, but I'm still not great at that. How did I learn how to? Well, I learned what an organization looked like as a kid. Okay. Being around certain groups that had different hierarchy and political nature to them. I learned more about that same situation in the Marine Corps, right? And then moving into my other line of work after that, I learned what an organization looked like and components that you needed. At the end of the day, man, it's all common sense. If you have common sense to deploy, right? It's, you need something, you go get it. Anytime I need something, I ask for it. When I got to the point where I needed consistent legal support, I asked around and was referred to our first attorney. And then I learned a tremendous amount from them about intellectual property and trademark law.
It's a big deal.
Because it was such a core component of what we were doing. Quite frankly, I spent more with them than kids spend to go to law school. And I had an education. I went to law school.
Yeah.
It just, my decisions actually affected my livelihood. Instead of learning theory, in theory, I was learning it, via practical application.
Yeah. And that's a really good way to learn, because rather than outsourcing your thinking to experts, you're bringing solutions in as you need them, and you get to experience the bumps and the bruises and the things that kind of actually teach you, rather than just saying, hey, you go handle this for me. You're involved in the process. There's a kind of a leadership expert, former military guy, Jocko Willink, and he talks about the idea that
I've heard of him.
Yeah, he's super sharp, man. I like his stuff. That freedom is on the other side of discipline, and most people miss that. We talked about the kids that I want to own my own business. I want to be my own boss, but they don't understand the discipline it takes to get to that type of autonomy and freedom. So maybe your military experience with the Marines, were there certain disciplines that you were taught in that season of life that helped you moving forward?
Of course.
Yeah.
No one's going to do it for you, but it must be done. So just do it. Just do it. Like, that's it. And there's no one to hear you cry about it. Nobody cares. And in fact, if you do cry about it, you're going to be punished on top of still having to do it. So just get it done.
Oh, that's good.
And that's, look, although I know the video's not on for the kids at home, but like, you sit face to face with one of the most stubborn people you've ever met in your life.
Wow.
And this is one of the core components to what some might consider my success.
Well, it's the resilience. It's got to be backed by something. It's that stubbornness, right?
You can never stop. And I ultimately learned how to channel my disobedience and my perpetual state of defiance into a source of energy that I could fuel myself towards a goal that ultimately I thought, I had the hunch, that may someday benefit me.
When you move forward professionally, as you grow as a leader, it has a cost to it. So you made sacrifices in your career. What are some of those trade-offs that people may not be aware of as you move forward and get to the place where you talked about a benchmark being I can sleep at night, and a benchmark being able I can set my own alarm? Like, Those are a lot of trade-offs to get to a place like that. So maybe what are some of the stories of trade-offs, of sacrifice to get to this point for your career?
When I started, I vividly remember, and I founded my brand in Hollywood originally, and Los Angeles is my city that I love, where all the pretty people come to do very ugly things. And I think that, in the beginning, right, as a beginner, an entry level player, you've got, like, for example, the celebrity gifting suite guys, going to hook you up, charge you a couple $1,000 to come give away thousands of dollars worth of merchandise to people that are going to afford you a photograph, right, to help you promote your business. And look, man, for some people that are capitalized, that have the extra scratch, why not afford yourself some of these luxuries, intelligently so, but after you survive that echelon of bottom feeder, right? Sorry, guys, if you're in that business, I'm not saying all, but you know what I'm talking about. Right. You know. So, the stakes only get higher, and the people that you sit across from are just that much more adept, and they themselves have ascended, right, and survived to be in the position where they are, and now they're sitting across the table from you. So the stakes only get higher, right, and the predators only become more vicious, right, and you have further to fall, right, and the stronger you get, it's like the more fragile you get in certain circumstances too, So I think that loss or sacrifice, I walked away from things that I love desperately, in terms of not permanently, but I walked away from pursuing, music professionally and consistently. The loss of friendship is very real, or the loss of, I guess, the shedding of innocence in some way, right? And the process of annealing yourself to be able to continue to perform in business, in a lot of ways, almost like, emotionally euthanizing yourself and being able to operate. It's hard to be a heart-driven human operator in certain industries, right?
Stepped on if you're not careful.
I mean, you're dealing with people that would literally step on their mother's head, to get one rung higher on the ladder climb, and not even feel anything about it.
No remorse.
It's crazy. Wow. I mean, the characters I've met in this business, man, I was like, really? Man, you are soulless. Crazy. But look, I mean, it is what it is. At the end of the day, I have to provide my family with the best living I possibly can. That is my goal. That is my mission. And that is why I do what I do every day, and every dollar I make is a dollar they don't. And they know it. So vice versa, right? So I guess the, a loss of several friendships along the way, kind of just getting to a point where you're not unplugged, but just, I don't know, it can get ugly if you let it.
Yeah.
I'd say that.
So you talked about something earlier that I thought was really significant, being around executive protection and some celebrity protection. Mm-hmm. You noticed habits in people. You noticed hard work that you didn't realize was there. Are there any habits that you've held on to? Do you have a routine that you kind of operate in every single day that helps you be successful?
I try to. Yeah, I try to. And I think it's such a common, the haves and the have-nots, right? Like someone has fame or some level of perceived success or wealth. And it's just that this is like handed to them. Like they're not at this escalated level or position because they worked that much harder for it, which is the reality, and continue to do so to maintain it. But that somehow it was just like they were given this, right? And I think that that's a very popular misconception in certain levels of people, right? And so, all of the clients that I worked for were up before the sun came up. They were exercised, right? Their fitness was in, which, as you know, endorphin release changes mindset, allows to help elevate focus and productivity throughout the day. And they were gone, and they were not home until well after the sun went down. And then they typically had certain scheduled activities that were, physical fitness related, that were salt and peppered throughout their schedule, right? But systematically, so that there was consistency. Some of the hardest working people I've ever seen in my life. And it was inspiring. At the time in the beginning, you're scratching your head, wondering what's wrong with these people. And then you why would you do? And then you realize nobody's going to do it for them. Presidents and CEOs of major entertainment companies. I mean, anyone you could imagine, I worked for, and I worked closely with them and their families. And I saw how very, very hard they worked.
That's a gift of a window into what that life looks like, That's a significant opportunity. Yeah. And I love that you've taken advantage of that and added that into, you've incorporated that into your lifestyle, your business practices. Well, maybe we just wrap with this question about, there are things now that have been significant learnings, but when you started, if you could go back, if you could tell yourself anything on the front end of that business journey, what would you tell yourself? What's the most important thing no one ever told you?
I'd say be a fireman. Get a couple duplexes, take paid vacation. No. It is the best job you can have working for somebody else, by the way. I highly encourage anyone to go into firefighting. I think it's an amazing career field. Man, okay, I remember sitting in the offices of Mitchell, Silverberg, and Knupp, which is a larger law firm in Los Angeles, and I had one of my flock of many attorneys, Eric German. Shout out to you, my man. And I knew him, interestingly enough, from the music business, and then he became my IP attorney. Okay, but I met him through this daisy chain of connectivity. Right? I signed one of my first licensing deals with Room 101 with him, and he said, Matt Booth is sitting in my office signing the deal that's going to change his life right now. And a little dramatic, I understand, but he was right. That deal changed the course of my life and changed the course of our business completely, and you have to keep your eye on the ball and pay attention at all times, because one thing leads to the next, and you're not going to slide into home plate off of one deal or even 1,000 deals, but get it right the first time, the best you can, because time is very precious. And I have sacrificed self in many ways, including years of my life. I've always said, if I was a piece of shit, I'd already be retired. Right. And that's funny and true in many ways, but there are many things that I could have done differently. Like, for example, my most expensive cigar moment. The most expensive cigar I had ever smoked cost me years of my life that I'll never get back. They were all part of my journey and all part of my brand's development in that category, but it still cost me dearly. And, when you're younger, you feel like you got time to burn, which in a way you do, but you should not make a practice of that, because before you know it, you're going to open up your eyes and you're going to be piloting a business effort or a brand effort where I'm selling products to people that were born when I was founding my brand.
Yeah.
You understand? And I just blinked my eyes and I'm here. Right. So, I think get it right the first time. Negotiate in your favor. Don't bend over for people. Don't make a practice of bending over for people further than you have to in the moment, because sometimes the best deal is also what's available to you at the time, right? But shoot to kill and make every shot count, because if you don't, you will live to regret it, and it'll cost you. And probably the way that it costs you is your time and your life.
That's really good, Matt. That's so helpful. Goodness gracious. Thank you for sharing that.
I hope so.
So you guys just released, is it Tobacconaut? Is that the new brand cigar that just came out?
Oh, Johnny Tobacco. Well, I mean, they're taking pre-orders for it. It'll ship holiday of this year, as well as Namakubi. The relaunch of Namakubi as a very, very beautiful holiday limited edition. That is actually going to be in country, and I'll be conducting a launch event with our brothers and sisters at Club Humidor in San Antonio at the end of this month.
Where can they find information about Room 101 cigars?
Well, first and foremost, go on the Instagram, right? Look me up, Matt Booth. It's Boofy Baby. I am the nucleus that connects all of the different categories that we offer, connected directly to Room 101 brand, Room 101 cigars, Room 101 gin, enlist in the Room 101 Shadow Army, of course, if you got the stuff. And, this is where you can find all the information on all things that are Room 101.
Matt, I'm excited for people to hear this because your story is incredible. Thanks for going back to the rearview mirror like we talked about and just remembering some of those significant moments that have built the business. We're grateful. I'm a big fan, and I hope we'll have a lot more big fans when this show releases.
Well, likewise, man. Look, I appreciate you taking the time, and I'm glad you found us, man. It's my honor. So grateful for the time, and I'm looking forward to sharing some more conversations with you.
Now, here's where I normally give you my 2 or 3 biggest takeaways, but as I hit pause on the interview with Matt, he had a few parting words that I thought were worth it to tag on to this interview. Check this out.
Well, I'm just excited to have our message out there. I mean, look, like I said, hopefully, somebody hears that, and one thing or another that I said is a lesson that helps them, make the right call or choose the right direction,
And you never know when you're having a conversation like that with a younger leader. That could be a catalyst, like you said, was it a sergeant that had that conversation with you?
Oh, staff sergeant. Yeah.
Yeah. Like he changed your life.
He did. He changed my life completely. Yeah. Because I would have never followed him had I not had that established rapport with him and the respect I had for him. And I followed him to that company, and that company, working for them, basically helped me establish my life.
And that's what I hope we do every time we tell one of these stories, is that something like changes somebody, you know what? Now I've got the courage to do it. I don't have to be so afraid of taking that next step. So what's your head count? How many people are on your staff team?
At the office?
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the category.
Okay.
In the jewelry category, we have basically 3 people that help me run that business on a daily basis. Okay. Zara is our main office manager, who is like the queen of Room 101, right?
Yeah.
And then we have other people, bench guys and whatnot, but they're contract workers. Okay. On the cigar side, I work with a partner in distribution where they're about, in their office, they have about 5 staff members that help in various ways to support us logistically. And, on the gin side, we have a very small team of special forces operators that are helping us pilot.
Who runs your socials?
I do. Well, I do, and a couple other guys. I can't do it all myself.
It's excellent.
Thank you.
The stories, the images are perfect. I mean, you sharing your customers' experience with the cigars, and it's like you guys have it going on, man. It's some really, really high level stuff.
Well, we're trying, man. We're just doing what feels right, and we're doing what we feel works, not only for us, but based on what we see out there. I mean, in the cigar business, when I first came into the cigar business, it was like mine for the taking. No one was doing anything like what we were doing. It was a virgin field, right? And we played that to our advantage, and we still do to this day. I mean, there aren't really many companies that are keeping up with us in terms of social connectivity, and ultimately that drives the pull through of the product. Well,
it's winning, so
Thank you.
Keep it up, man.
Thank
Absolutely. You. Matt, I know you're a busy dude, so I'll let you get back to your day. This was a blast for me.
Me too.
Keep it up. I'll keep buying. I'm going to get me some of the Johnny Tobacconaut when it comes out. I'm pumped about that. And we'll talk soon, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the time, man. I appreciate you.
You got it. All right.
Take care.
All right. No One Ever Told Me family. One request before we dive into the leadership takeaways. If you've got gifts to buy for the cigar lovers in your life, make sure you first connect with Matt Booth and the Room 101 team on Instagram to find out where you can get that ultra unique gift for the holidays. Okay, besides getting to talk about world-class cigars, here are the two things I love the most from this conversation. Number one, Matt said if you're lucky enough to do what you love for a living, you should hope to continue to love what it is you do. There's no denying that familiarity breeds contempt, and if you start a passion project, make sure you build in the necessary guardrails so that you can continue to love it after successes, failures, and sleepless nights try to steal your joy. There's meaning in your work. There's meaning in the things you're responsible for. Take a time out if you have to be grateful for the work you have and to rekindle what made you do it in the first place. Number two, Matt said this very briefly, but he said, if you're paying attention, there are lessons everywhere. I couldn't agree more. There's always so much to learn. The beginning of wisdom is humility, and a humble person can learn from anything. Business leaders need wisdom to navigate the complexities of their craft, their organization, their industry, and their world. Make a choice to become a wise leader. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for stopping by, and make sure you check out all things Room 101. Pass this podcast on to a friend, and make sure you join us next time on the No One Ever Told Me podcast.